I started working overnight at Walmart the summer after my 24th birthday. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the rent. My days blurred into nights, my nights into that strange in-between silence that only exists in 24-hour stores at 3 a.m. The hum of the freezers, the squeak of the pallet jack wheels, the smell of cardboard and cleaner, it all became my normal. I worked mostly in home goods, where the shelves were lined with towels, candles, and cheap picture frames that reflected the fluorescent lights like tiny mirrors. There was a rhythm to the job. Cut the box, stock the item, face the shelf, move to the next aisle. Sometimes I'd hum to keep myself awake. We were a small crew. Me, Marcus from hardware, and Tara, who did electronics. Our manager, Rob, spent most of the night in his office pretending to do inventory reports. It wasn't bad work, just lonely. One night in late September, the automatic doors up front hissed open and I caught movement from the corner of my eye. A man walked slowly past the front registers, hands in his pockets. His clothes were ordinary, dark jeans, gray hoodie, but something about him made my chest tighten. He wasn't shopping. He was watching. He leaned against the end of my aisle, maybe 20 feet away, head tilted just slightly, his eyes following every move I made. "Can I help you find something?" I asked, forcing my voice steady. The man smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "I like watching people work," he said. I froze. "You can't be back here this late. The store's closed to customers." He didn't move, just kept smiling. Then, without a word, he turned and walked away. I stood there for a long time, listening to the echo of his footsteps fade into another aisle. My heart was beating hard enough to drown out the hum of the lights. The next night, I came in early, hoping it had been a one-time thing. Rob laughed when I told him about the guy. "Probably some drunk wandered in before the doors locked," he said. "You worry too much." Maybe he was right. I tried to shake it off. But when I turned into aisle 9 around midnight, that same prickling feeling crawled up my neck. He was there again. Same man, same clothes, standing at the end of the aisle, watching me with that small, unnerving grin. "Sir, you can't be here," I said, louder this time. He started humming, a slow, tuneless sound, low and steady. The kind of noise that gets under your skin. I reached for my radio. "Rob, we've got a trespasser in home goods," I said, static, no response. When I looked back, the man was gone. I rushed to the end of the aisle, looked left, right, nothing. No footsteps, no sound. Just rows of empty shelves and the soft drone of the air vents. That humming, though, it lingered in my ears long after he disappeared. I didn't see him again for a week. I started to convince myself I'd imagined it. Sleep deprivation can do that. Then, one morning, just before dawn, I clocked out and pushed through the heavy glass doors. The parking lot was mostly empty except for a few employee cars glistening under the orange lights. And there he was, standing perfectly still near the far end of the lot, under a single flickering streetlight. Same hoodie, same stillness. He wasn't facing me at first, but as I stepped off the curb, he turned, slowly, and stared right at me. I froze. Every instinct screamed to get in my car, but my keys slipped from my shaking hands. They hit the pavement with a soft jingle. When I bent down to grab them, I heard it again, that humming. Low, distant, almost like a lullaby. I ran. Didn't look back. Just got in my car, locked the doors, and tore out of the lot like my life depended on it. When I told Rob the next day, he sighed. "You sure it's not just some homeless guy? We've had that before. Homeless people don't show up at the same time 2 weeks in a row just to watch someone work." I snapped. He stared at me, unimpressed. "Look, I'll have security check the cameras, but you gotta chill, man." They checked. Nothing. No man in a hoodie. No one standing under that light. But I knew what I saw. I started carrying pepper spray in my pocket. Tara noticed first. "You okay, Luke?" she asked one night, sipping coffee in the break room. "Yeah, just tired." She gave me a look that said she didn't believe it. That night, around 2 a.m., I caught the sound of humming again. I turned off my box cutter and listened. It was faint, coming from somewhere near the loading dock. I followed the sound through the dim back hall, every fluorescent bulb flickering above me. The humming grew louder, clearer. Then it stopped. The security monitor on the wall flickered, the feed from the parking lot camera. There he was, the man in the hoodie, standing just outside the employee entrance, head tilted, face turned up toward the camera. He was smiling. I backed away, heart slamming against my ribs. "Rob!" I yelled. By the time we pulled up the footage again, the screen was blank. The timestamp rolled on, but the image was gone, erased or overwritten. I quit the next morning. A month passed. I started working days at a small local warehouse, trying to forget Walmart. But the memory of that humming followed me everywhere. One night I stopped by a grocery store after work. It was late, almost closing time. I was in the detergent aisle when I caught it, the faint hum of that same tune. I turned. Down at the end of the aisle, a man in a gray hoodie stood motionless, head tilted, watching. My stomach dropped. I left my basket and walked straight to the exit, forcing myself not to run. When I got to my car, he was already standing 3 aisles away in the lot, under another flickering light, just like before. I drove straight home and called the police. They took my report but didn't find anyone in the area. That night I nailed my windows shut and didn't sleep. Weeks went by. I stopped seeing him, moved apartments, changed my number. But sometimes late at night I'll wake up to the faint sound of humming outside my window. Low, slow, almost like it's coming from the walls themselves. And every time I hear it, I remember his words. I like watching people work. Never ignore your instincts. When something feels wrong, when someone's presence sends that cold pulse of fear through your gut, it's not paranoia, it's survival. We're taught to be polite, to downplay danger, to laugh off unease. But sometimes the cost of politeness is too high. Trust yourself. The moment you stop listening to that inner alarm might be the moment you don't get another chance. I had spent most of the early morning juggling tasks at home, folding laundry, checking emails, and keeping an ear on my 7-year-old daughter, Ava. Summer had just begun in Millersburg, Indiana, and the quiet streets made errands feel deceptively calm. Ava was a whirlwind of curiosity and energy. Her oversized glasses slipped down her nose as she asked questions about everything. "Mom, how is glue made? Why do clouds float? Do dolls really sleep at night?" I loved her inquisitiveness, but it was a constant exercise in vigilance, balancing her need to explore with the necessity of keeping her safe. That morning I decided on a quick trip to Big Gum's Market for back-to-school supplies. I hoped the early hour would mean few shoppers and perhaps a smooth trip for both of us. The store was quiet as we entered, aisles neatly stocked, the occasional announcement echoing overhead. We headed straight to the school supply section, filling our cart with the usual essentials: colorful binders, rainbow packs of gel pens, glue sticks, and a watermelon-shaped pencil case that Ava immediately clutched. She was thrilled at the small adventure of selecting her own items, and I let her run ahead a few steps to inspect the binders while I compared sizes. "Mom, can I check the dolls?" she asked, eyes sparkling. I paused and reminded her of our safety rule. Only approach people wearing store uniforms, and if anything felt off, come straight to me. Stay close, okay? Don't talk to anyone unless they're wearing a name tag or a uniform. She grinned, gave me a little salute, and darted off toward the doll aisle. I smiled, assuming the small distance between us would be safe. Within 2 minutes, I heard another voice, low, calm, practiced, someone speaking to Ava. My heart skipped. I turned just in time to see a man, mid-40s, casually dressed, baseball cap pulled low, gesturing toward the back of the store. "They keep the good dolls back there on clearance," he said softly. "Most people never check that area." My gut screamed danger. Every instinct I had, honed from years of parenting and paying attention to subtle social cues, screamed that this man wasn't here by chance. He smiled, friendly on the surface, but the warmth didn't reach his eyes. My first thought was not to confront him aggressively. Panic would only escalate the situation. I walked calmly around the corner, placing a steady hand on Ava's shoulder. She looked up at me, trusting, unaware of the potential danger. "Hi, sweetie," I said gently, my voice firm enough to convey authority without alarming her. The man noticed me, shifted slightly, but did not directly approach. Instead, he made a subtle effort to lure Ava away, pointing vaguely toward the back of the store. When he realized I was near, he walked off casually, blending back into the aisles like nothing had happened. I stayed close to Ava, guiding her back to the front, heart still racing. Even as he exited the store without a purchase, the unease lingered, heavy and uncomfortable. I knew then that he was deliberate, calculated, and had likely done this before. Security reviewed cameras afterward, but blind spots in the store meant the man wasn't clearly identifiable. I filed a report, describing him in detail, hoping that at least the documentation might help prevent future incidents. Walking Ava out, hand firmly on her shoulder, I reflected on how unprepared I had been for someone so ordinary-looking yet so intent on testing boundaries. The rest of that week, I found myself replaying the encounter in my mind repeatedly. How ordinary he had seemed, just another shopper. But the way he targeted Ava, trying to coax her toward a less trafficked area, unsettled me. I realized that vigilance isn't just about obvious danger. Threats often appear quiet, friendly, and unremarkable, relying on children's trust and adults' assumptions about normalcy. I started making mental lists of safety protocols for future trips. Always hold Ava's hand in crowded spaces, keep a constant line of sight, pre-identify store employees, and always have a way to exit quickly. I began explaining scenarios to her in a way that didn't terrify her but built awareness. If anyone you don't know tries to show you a shortcut or asks you to follow them, come find me immediately. She nodded, absorbing it like a serious little student. Even routine errands felt different. I noticed people standing too long at aisle ends, scanning shelves without shopping, or following the flow of customers more closely than necessary. My paranoia grew alongside my awareness, but I knew it was justified. Learning to distinguish between normal behavior and subtle predation became a survival skill, one that I couldn't afford to ignore. Over the next month, I adjusted our routines. Grocery and school supply trips were scheduled early in the morning when the store was less crowded. Ava was instructed to stay within a few feet of me at all times, and we practiced situational awareness together. I carried my phone in hand, scanning for exits and noting the positions of employees throughout the store. These adjustments weren't easy. Ava's natural curiosity conflicted with the need for caution, and I often found myself torn between fostering independence and protecting her. One afternoon, while navigating crowded checkout lines, I explained, "It's not that we can't have fun, but safety always comes first. We can explore, just not alone." Even with precautions, I couldn't erase the image of that man's smile, the practiced calm that masked intent. His appearance had shifted something fundamental in me, a recognition that danger doesn't always announce itself. The experience gradually reshaped my approach to parenting. Beyond Ava, I became more observant in public spaces, noting strangers who lingered, tracking exits and blind spots, and teaching both Ava and her older brother the importance of trusting their instincts. I shared my story with other parents and even requested that Ava's school schedule a stranger danger seminar earlier than usual in the academic year. Awareness could save time, energy, and potentially lives. The incident had left its mark, but I discovered a balance between caution and normalcy. We still shopped, explored parks, and attended public events, but we did so with intention, awareness, and preparation. Months later, I reflect on that day as a turning point. Ava's innocence and trust made her endearing, but it also made her vulnerable. What scared me most wasn't what happened. It was what almost could have happened. The man didn't touch her. He didn't yell. He simply existed in the space, testing boundaries and relying on routine and trust to do his work. Our new routines, constant supervision, clear safety rules, situational awareness, didn't eliminate risk, but they reduced it significantly. I realized that parenting in today's world involves teaching children to explore safely, recognize subtle threats, and trust their instincts. Even routine errands carry risks, and danger often appears ordinary and benign. Vigilance, preparation, and clear communication with children are essential for safety. Protecting loved ones doesn't require fear. It requires awareness, trust in instincts, and the ability to act calmly when situations feel wrong. I had just wrapped up a week that felt longer than it should have, balancing remote work while keeping an eye on my 9-year-old son, Liam. Summer break had just begun, and Mesa, Arizona, was already punishing the city with June heat that made the asphalt feel soft under my shoes. By 5 p.m., the sun had a personal vendetta against anyone daring to step outside. I needed groceries. I needed a break. Most of all, I needed to clear my head before my patience completely evaporated. "Liam, shoes on, quick trip to Walmart," I called from the living room. He came bounding out, still wearing his beat-up Spider-Man sneakers, a grin plastered across his freckled face. "Can I check the Nerf aisle?" he asked, bouncing on his heels. "You can look, but no buying today, deal?" I replied, digging my wallet from the counter. "Deal," he said, already halfway down the driveway. Our local Walmart was the big one off Southern Avenue. Too hot inside, often chaotic, never enough carts, and with AC that sputtered like it was punishing us for trying to shop. I pushed our cart past produce while Liam bolted toward the toy section. I told him I'd be a few aisles over, scanning school supplies. That's when I first noticed him. A man, thin, mid-40s, gray t-shirt tucked neatly into faded jeans, a baseball cap low over his eyes, stood at the end of the toy aisle. He wasn't shopping, no cart, no basket, nothing in his hands but a random plastic dinosaur. He didn't speak or approach Liam. He just watched, subtly, deliberately, like a shadow that belonged nowhere but had every right to be there. I shook my head. Overreacting, I muttered to myself, focusing on the notebooks in my cart. But instinct kept sending me glances back. Minutes later, he appeared again near the RC cars, maintaining distance but always keeping our path within view. My stomach churned. "Liam, stay close," I said, kneeling by his shoulder as we passed the cereal aisle. He nodded, the usual excitement drained from his eyes. Even at 9, he sensed the unease that pulsed through me. By the time we reached self-checkout, my chest was tight, my palms clammy. I tried to convince myself the ordeal was over, only to see him across the parking lot, crouched between 2 cars, pretending to tie his shoe. Liam whispered, "Isn't that the guy from inside?" Something inside me snapped. I jogged back into the store, heading straight for customer service. The woman behind the desk listened, a crease forming between her brows. They pulled the security footage and every horrifying suspicion was confirmed. He had followed us from the toy aisle to groceries, never buying, never speaking, always trailing. By the time I returned to the car, my mind was racing. I installed a dash cam the next day and swore Liam would never wander alone in a store again. That afternoon, I realized something fundamental had shifted. Not just my shopping habits, but the way I would parent and protect my child from that day forward. For days afterward, I replayed every step of the encounter in my mind. I visualized the man's slow movements, his careful positioning at the far end of the aisles, his casual, almost polite demeanor. It wasn't the aggression that terrified me. It was the precision. Someone who knew how to be noticed but remain unnoticed. I started noticing patterns in my daily life I had ignored before. People lingering too long near entrances, a figure watching my car from a distance, an unfamiliar face in the checkout line that refused to look away. Every routine became a potential risk. I stopped going grocery shopping alone. I avoided walking in empty parking lots. My world had shrunk in subtle ways that made me feel both safer and trapped. One morning I told Liam, "You always stick with me in stores, no exceptions, okay?" "Okay," he said, nodding solemnly. There was no question in his voice, no bargaining. He had learned that safety mattered more than freedom, at least for now. Even simple errands became exercises in vigilance. I carried my phone in one hand, my cart in the other, scanning the aisles as if my life depended on noticing the small things. A misplaced glance, a too long pause, a shadow where there shouldn't be one. Weeks later, I returned to Walmart with my younger daughter, Ava. 7 years old, glasses sliding down her nose, laughter that could fill a room. I let her wander the back-to-school section while I compared binder sizes. It was only 2 minutes before I heard her voice talking to someone. A man. He wasn't aggressive, not yet, but his smile was practiced. "They keep the good toys back near the loading bay," he said casually. My stomach dropped. I stepped around the aisle, calm but firm. "Ava, come here." Her small hand slid into mine and we walked to customer service together. The man didn't follow directly but passed aisles in the same slow, casual manner, leaving a chill wherever he went. He vanished into the parking lot without incident. Still, the lesson was clear. Danger isn't always obvious and vigilance is never overkill. The months following these encounters reshaped my life. I started teaching both children to recognize subtle warning signs, to trust their instincts. I made safety routines for stores, always near the cart, never distracted, always aware of exits. My friends noticed I had changed, cautious, almost paranoid, but I couldn't apologize. I couldn't erase the memory of a stranger who had watched, waited, and vanished. Even at home, I carried that vigilance. I double-checked locks, walked parking lots slowly, and watched the shadows in ways I never had before. It was exhausting, yes, but empowering. I had learned that alertness could save you. Eventually, life went on. Grocery shopping became structured, deliberate. I never let the kids wander alone, and I taught them how to stay aware without being afraid. Each trip was calculated: timing, routes, spacing, observation. My paranoia had morphed into preparedness. I realized the encounter didn't take away freedom. It taught me responsibility. Danger exists, sometimes in ordinary places, in ordinary people. But preparation, awareness, and instinct could give you the edge when it mattered most. Life is unpredictable, and threats often hide in plain sight. Safety isn't guaranteed, but vigilance, awareness, and trust in your instincts can protect you and your loved ones. Ordinary routines can conceal extraordinary risk, and it's better to act on caution than to dismiss the quiet warning signs your gut provides. For months, my life had revolved around night shifts as a private security contractor in Florence, South Carolina. The work was physically demanding, patrolling textile warehouses, climbing stairwells, and inspecting storage areas that lacked air conditioning during the humid summer months. Most nights ended around 6 a.m., my uniform soaked through with sweat, back aching from hours on my feet. I was exhausted, but there was a rhythm to it, a sense of responsibility that kept me going. On that particular morning, I decided to stop at the Walmart on Ashbury Road to grab essentials before heading home: mouthwash, deodorant, socks, and a phone charger that had been acting up. I figured the early hour would be ideal: fewer customers, quiet aisles, and a chance to move quickly without stress. I parked near the lawn and garden entrance, noting the early sunlight casting long shadows across the lot. The store was quiet as I entered, the hum of fluorescent lights above and the occasional clatter of a distant cart echoing faintly. I grabbed a cart and made my way to the hygiene aisle, scanning shelves and comparing deodorant brands, my back stiff from the night shift. I was halfway through selecting items when I felt rather than saw him, a presence just behind me. A man approached casually, his gait confident, his body language practiced, almost rehearsed. "Morning, sir. I think you may have left your phone outside," he said, low, calm, but carrying an authority that immediately triggered my instincts. I froze for a moment, a flash of recognition sparking from years of security work. There was something about the way he moved, confident, purposeful, like he had done this before. My gut tightened. He wasn't wearing a store vest, didn't carry a radio, and had no visible identification. Yet he navigated the aisles like he belonged there, weaving between shelves with calculated ease. "Thanks, but I checked," I replied cautiously, glancing over my shoulder. "Are you with store security?" He hesitated for a fraction of a second, his polite demeanor faltering just enough for me to notice the tightness in his lips. "I help out with loss prevention sometimes," he said casually, "just keeping an eye on things." Something about the phrasing, the timing, the casual authority, it all set off alarms. I had encountered many people who tried to assert false authority in my line of work. My instincts screamed that this wasn't about helping. I decided not to confront him further in the aisles. Instead, I maintained distance, making mental notes of his appearance. Mid-50s, average build, polo shirt tucked neatly into khaki cargo pants, boots polished enough to suggest familiarity with uniformed roles. I moved deliberately toward the front of the store, keeping him in sight without overtly staring. His pace mirrored mine, almost enough to suggest coincidence, but my gut told me otherwise. I asked him directly again, "Can I see some identification?" His expression shifted subtly, the practiced politeness giving way to something defensive. "They don't make us wear ID anymore," he said, voice firm but calm. "Too many complaints from customers." I wasn't buying it. My heart started racing, but I kept my voice steady. "I just need to know who you are. If you're not authorized, I'm going to involve management." He gave a short, polite nod, then turned, maintaining a casual distance, following me just far enough to observe but not close enough to trigger immediate confrontation. My hands were slightly sweaty on the cart handle, and I could feel adrenaline sharpening every sense. I walked to customer service and explained the situation carefully, describing the man's clothing, demeanor, and the suspicious way he had approached me. The young woman at the desk looked concerned, exchanged a glance with her supervisor, and called security. I stayed near the counter, silently scanning the store and parking lot. Within minutes, a security officer arrived, reviewing my description and immediately moving to investigate. I followed at a safe distance, observing the man as he continued to wander the store. He didn't purchase anything, didn't interact with anyone except me. The way he moved, it was methodical, controlled, rehearsed. They checked the parking lot. I strained to see through the large glass doors, but he was gone. Just like that, he vanished, leaving no trace except the unease that clenched my gut. I was shaken, realizing how quickly an ordinary errand could become dangerous. The security officer told me that they had received reports of a man targeting early morning shoppers, usually those appearing distracted, using the pretense of being store security to get close. My mind replayed every detail: the confident gait, the casual warnings, the subtle intimidation. All the training, all the instincts, had kept me alert. But it could have gone differently. I left the store quickly, tension heavy in my chest. Even on my drive home, I couldn't shake the lingering unease. Ordinary errands, I realized, could conceal extraordinary danger. Familiar spaces like grocery stores or Walmart, places I assumed were safe, could harbor risk. I became hyper-aware of my surroundings, not paranoid, but vigilant. I noted exit points, employee locations, and potential blind spots. I carried a small flashlight in my bag and kept my phone easily accessible. Every small detail mattered. The way people moved, the questions they asked, the confidence in their posture. The experience changed more than just my habits. It reshaped how I perceived ordinary life. My trust in public spaces was tempered with caution, not fear, but an active awareness of the world's unpredictability. Weeks later, I returned to Walmart during daylight, accompanied by a friend. The aisles felt familiar but still carried the memory of that encounter. I moved deliberately, paying attention to unfamiliar faces, odd behavior, and anything out of place. I realized that vigilance, preparation, and intuition were powerful tools, not paranoia, but protection. The incident taught me that safety is rarely guaranteed. Threats often appear ordinary, blending seamlessly into everyday routines. But awareness and instincts, honed by experience, can create an invisible shield, helping you respond before harm occurs. I continued working, continued living, but with a renewed respect for small details and subtle cues. Life would always carry risk, but I had learned that ordinary errands required extraordinary attention. Danger can hide in familiar, everyday places, and ordinary appearances can mask malicious intent. Trusting your instincts, maintaining awareness, and acting decisively when something feels wrong are essential tools to protect yourself. Routine alone does not guarantee safety. Preparation, observation, and vigilance are your first line of defense against the unexpected. It was a Thursday afternoon, and the sun was beginning its slow descent toward the horizon, casting a warm glow across the streets of our small town in Georgia. My husband was out of town on a business trip, leaving me alone with my 5-year-old daughter, Lily. Life was always a balancing act, but today felt different, not because of anything extraordinary, but because I was acutely aware of just how vulnerable we were as a pair. We had planned a simple grocery run to Walmart. I liked doing these errands with Lily. It gave her a sense of responsibility, and she loved helping me pick out fruits and snacks. Plus, it was one of the few times she had my undivided attention. We were on a mission: cereal, milk, snacks, and anything else that would make the week run smoothly. The store was busy but manageable. Families, couples, and a few older shoppers were scattered among the aisles, but it wasn't crowded. I let Lily wander a little ahead of me within my line of sight, and watched as she examined a shelf of colorful cereal boxes. She reached for one, giggling, and I smiled. "Good choice, sweetie," I said, glancing down at my list. That's when I noticed him. A man standing a few feet away, holding a small chocolate bar in his hand. His eyes were fixed on Lily, and he had a smile that didn't reach his eyes. My stomach dropped. There was something off about him, something instinctively wrong. "Hey, sweetie," he said, his voice soft but deliberate. "Want some candy?" Time seemed to slow. I froze for a moment, processing what he had said. My hand found Lily's, and I gripped it tightly. "No, thank you," I replied firmly, trying to keep my voice calm but alert. My pulse was racing, and I could feel a cold tension curling in my stomach. He didn't leave. Instead, he took a small step closer, casually, almost like he was testing my reaction. Every maternal instinct I had screamed at me to remove Lily from his proximity immediately. "Lily, let's go check the apples," I said quickly, tugging her hand. She looked up at me, sensing my urgency. "Okay, Mommy," she whispered. I kept my eyes on him as we moved toward the produce section, subtly guiding Lily behind me. He moved slowly but deliberately, weaving through the aisles, keeping us in his line of sight. My heart pounded in my chest and my thoughts raced. I tried to remember everything I had been told about situations like this. Don't panic. Keep the child close. Don't run blindly. Get to a public area. By the time we reached the front of the store, I maneuvered Lily into the cart seat, keeping her close and positioning myself between her and the rest of the store. I kept my eyes on the man as I scanned the checkout lanes for the nearest employee. He lingered for a few moments longer, then finally turned away and drifted toward another aisle. I exhaled slowly, trying to calm my trembling hands. The sense of vulnerability didn't leave me, though. Once outside, I pulled out my phone, texting my husband to let him know we were safe. I also called the local police, reporting the man's description and actions. They assured me they would send an officer to the area, though he had already driven off by the time they arrived. That night, lying next to Lily in her bed, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the man's face, remembered the way he held the chocolate bar, and the casual menace in his voice. What had been a simple grocery trip had nearly become a nightmare, and the realization of how quickly a normal day could turn dangerous left me unsettled. The following morning, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I told myself I was overreacting. After all, nothing had actually happened. But the memory of the man's gaze lingered like a shadow over my thoughts. Every time Lily ran ahead to play with her toys or when I stepped outside, I found myself scanning the surroundings, watching for strangers who didn't belong. At breakfast, Lily hummed happily, unaware of my anxiety. "Mommy, can we go to the park later?" she asked, spooning cereal into her mouth. I nodded, trying to sound cheerful. "Sure, sweetie, we'll go after lunch." But even as I sipped my coffee, my mind replayed every moment from yesterday. What if I had let go of her hand for a second? What if he had approached more aggressively? The scenarios multiplied in my head, each one worse than the last. I realized how quickly safety could be compromised and how fragile our sense of security was. By mid-morning, I decided to call a friend, just to talk through my fears. "You're doing the right thing," my friend reassured me. "Trust your instincts. You felt something was off and you acted. That's all that matters." Despite her words, I felt a lingering paranoia. Every store run, every public outing now felt like a potential threat. I started scanning the aisles, noting exits and security cameras. My vigilance was exhausting, but I knew it was necessary. By the time the afternoon rolled around, I had scheduled a quick trip to pick up a few more groceries. This time, I stayed hyper-aware, keeping Lily close, never letting her wander. I noticed every suspicious glance, every lingering stranger, and I felt an adrenaline-fueled focus that I hadn't experienced before. The next few days were tense. Whenever I left the house, I remained alert, scanning crowds, observing behaviors. My friends started to notice my unease. "You're scaring yourself," my sister said, brushing my hair back as we sat at her kitchen table. "I get it, but you can't live in fear all the time." "I know," I admitted. "But what if I'm wrong about instinct? What if I miss something?" The memory of the man in Walmart haunted me. The casual approach, the small chocolate bar, the way he tried to lure Lily. I couldn't rationalize it away. I realized that mothers carry a heightened sense of awareness, an innate radar for potential threats to their children. That night at Walmart had awakened mine fully. Weeks later, I returned to Walmart with a friend and her child. I wanted to reclaim a sense of normalcy, to show Lily that life didn't have to be consumed by fear. Yet, I stayed vigilant, teaching Lily small rules: stay close, hold hands, and always look for a familiar adult. As we navigated the aisles, I explained quietly, "If anyone ever makes you feel uncomfortable, come straight to me, okay?" She nodded, eyes wide. It was an important lesson, one I had learned through experience rather than theory. Even then, I found myself noting exits, watching for unusual behavior, and keeping my daughter firmly by my side. The fear hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into cautious strength, a proactive awareness rather than paralysis. Months passed and life slowly returned to normal. The man at Walmart was never seen again, and the police closed the report after finding no leads. Yet the experience left an indelible mark on me. I had learned that vigilance, instinct, and decisive action could protect both myself and my child. I realized that fear, when acknowledged and managed, could be a powerful tool. It sharpened my senses and reinforced the importance of preparation, observation, and action in moments of potential danger. Protecting those we love requires awareness, courage, and trust in our instincts. While we cannot control the actions of others, we can prepare ourselves to respond decisively when faced with potential threats. Life may present unforeseen dangers, but vigilance and presence of mind can make the difference between safety and tragedy. I never imagined a simple trip to the store could leave me feeling so vulnerable. For years, grocery shopping had been a mundane task, a short break from work, a moment to myself. I liked the predictability of it, grabbing a cart, weaving through aisles, checking off my list. But that evening, in late August, everything shifted. It had been a long day at the office, and by the time I clocked out, my energy was nearly gone. My apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that presses down on you if you're alone long enough. I needed groceries, milk, bread, eggs, maybe some fruit for the week. Nothing exciting, nothing risky. The Walmart I usually visited was a 30-minute drive from my apartment, a big box store with wide aisles and flickering fluorescent lights. I parked near the entrance, noting the shadows that stretched long across the lot as the sun dipped behind the buildings. My cart squeaked as I grabbed it and started down the first aisle. The place was almost deserted. The hum of the refrigeration units and the occasional clatter of a cart were the only sounds. That's when I noticed him. A man pushing an empty cart was coming toward me in a completely empty aisle. He didn't speak, didn't glance around like someone browsing. He just moved steadily toward me. As our carts passed, I thought nothing of it. But when I turned down the next aisle, there he was again, matching my pace almost perfectly. My stomach knotted. "Excuse me," I said cautiously, trying to sound casual. "Are you looking for something?" He didn't answer. He just smiled, a small, unsettling curl of the lips, and continued to mirror my steps. My heart rate picked up. I quickened my pace, weaving through the store, trying to put other shoppers or displays between us. But no matter where I turned, he was there, silent, pushing his cart as if it belonged to me. I tried rationalizing it. Maybe he was lost. Maybe he was following the same shopping list. But the way he moved, that smile, it wasn't normal. And then, without warning, he slammed his cart into mine, pinning me against the shelves. The collision sent my groceries clattering to the floor. What is your problem?" I stammered, backing away. He didn't speak. Instead, he twirled a small utility knife in his hand. The metal glinted under the harsh lights. My mind went blank for a moment, and then survival instincts kicked in. I pushed my cart against the edge of the shelving to create a barrier, my knuckles white. "I'm calling security," I shouted, fumbling for my phone. He smiled again, an eerily calm expression, and then slowly turned, disappearing down the aisle like nothing had happened. I didn't dare follow him. My legs were trembling as I sprinted to the nearest employee station, waving my hands to get attention. "Security," I gasped. "There's a man. He has a knife. He just attacked me." 2 security guards arrived within minutes. I pointed down the aisles, but the man was gone. When I left the store, heart still hammering, I saw him across the parking lot, standing perfectly still, staring at my car. Then, as if melting into the shadows, he vanished. That's when I realized something I had never considered before. Safety was never guaranteed. After that day, my life changed in small but persistent ways. I avoided shopping alone. I switched stores, shopped during daylight hours, and kept my phone in hand at all times. But no amount of preparation could erase the memory of his smile or the glint of that knife. I replayed the encounter over and over. Could I have done something differently? Should I have shouted sooner, run faster, called the police immediately? The more I thought, the more I realized the truth. Some people thrive on fear itself, and no amount of planning could fully protect me from random encounters with malice. I even started noticing him in my dreams. Empty aisles, his cart sliding silently along the floor, that same calm smile. In the daylight, though, I tried to convince myself it was just paranoia. It was one man, I told myself. He's not going to find you again. But deep down, I knew better. People like that don't forget. Their patterns repeat. And that realization gnawed at me, a persistent itch I couldn't scratch. One evening, 2 weeks later, I was at the same store, nervously checking the aisles for signs of him, my hands gripping the cart tighter than necessary. I kept telling myself it was irrational, but the fear didn't fade. The store was quiet, almost too quiet, and my imagination filled the empty spaces with possibilities I didn't want to consider. I heard footsteps behind me, a cart rolling. I froze, every nerve in my body screaming. My pulse thundered in my ears. I turned slowly, just enough to see an empty aisle. No one there. My stomach clenched. This was the new reality. I had lost a sense of ease in public spaces, a freedom I once took for granted. Even with friends and coworkers, I found myself explaining less and less. How do you describe a shadow that lingers, a sense of being watched without sounding hysterical? Instead, I focused on logistics, changing my routes, shopping in groups, staying aware. But the fear was no longer a story. It was a constant companion. One Saturday morning, I was shopping with a friend who had insisted on accompanying me. I wanted to reclaim some sense of normalcy, to prove to myself that the world wasn't inherently dangerous. We were in the cereal aisle when I caught a movement out of the corner of my eye. Another man, mid-40s, pushing a cart but not browsing, walking slowly and deliberately. He didn't seem to notice us. My chest tightened instantly. My friend noticed the change in my expression. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked. I think we should move," I said, my voice low. We changed aisles, my hands tightening on the cart. The man followed, just out of reach, just out of sight. My stomach lurched. Every instinct screamed the same warning: don't underestimate this. Finally, I led my friend to the customer service desk and explained what I was seeing. She called security, but by the time guards arrived, the man had vanished. My heart was still racing. It wasn't about a theft or a confrontation. It was about control. The way someone could assert presence in your space and make you question your safety without ever touching you. The experience didn't end in the store. For months, I replayed it in every quiet parking lot, every empty aisle. I learned to recognize patterns in people's movements, subtle signs of someone lingering too long, watching too carefully. My friends noticed the changes. I was hyper-vigilant, always scanning. Even when I returned to normal routines, the shadow of that man lingered in my mind. I avoided being alone, carried pepper spray, and always had my phone ready. The freedom I once took for granted, the ability to shop, walk, or park without anxiety, was gone. Months later, I realized something important. The fear, though exhausting, had taught me vigilance. It had taught me the value of paying attention, trusting instincts, and never dismissing gut feelings. I could no longer ignore the possibility that danger might be ordinary, quiet, and subtle. I also understood the importance of speaking up, reporting suspicious behavior, and supporting security measures in public spaces. Knowledge, awareness, and preparation don't eliminate risk, but they give you a fighting chance. Life moved forward cautiously. I returned to the store eventually, this time with a friend, and even then I stayed aware, alert. I refused to let fear dominate my life, but I carried it like a reminder. A tool, not a burden. Some threats aren't loud. They aren't obvious. They don't come with warnings. And sometimes the only thing between you and harm is attention, preparation, and instinct. Safety is not guaranteed, and danger often hides in plain sight. Awareness, vigilance, and trusting your instincts are crucial in protecting yourself. Ordinary routines can conceal extraordinary risk, and it's better to act on caution than dismiss your gut feeling. The world isn't inherently safe, but careful observation, preparedness, and courage can keep you one step ahead. I had been working at Walmart for a few months, mostly on the overnight and evening shifts when the routine finally started to feel comfortable. Cashier work wasn't glamorous, but it had its rhythm. Scanning items, making small talk with regulars, occasionally juggling a line of impatient customers. The store hum of fluorescent lights, distant carts clattering, and muffled announcements felt like white noise, background to my small, predictable world. That Tuesday afternoon, the store was quiet. My register beeped intermittently, mostly empty carts rolling past. I was halfway through a sandwich from the break room when a man approached. He was wearing a Walmart vest, neatly tucked shirt, khakis, typical enough to blend in, but something about his posture made my stomach tighten. "Hi, I'm Greg," he said, shaking my hand with an easy smile. I just started from another department. His voice was casual, but his eyes lingered a bit too long. "Welcome," I replied, glancing at the register line. We haven't met before. Yeah, it's my first week, he said, tilting his head. So, when do you get off work? And where do you live, roughly? I froze. Most people didn't ask questions like that. I usually clock out around 10, I said cautiously. And I live not far from here. Greg smiled, not responding, just letting the information hang in the air. I forced a polite nod and returned to scanning items, trying to shake the feeling of unease that had started crawling up my spine. For the next several days, I noticed him frequently. He appeared in different aisles, sometimes standing near the entrances for long stretches. He always wore the same vest, same khakis, same unnerving smile. My coworkers shrugged him off. Probably a new employee, one said. Stores have transfers all the time. But I had a gut feeling that something wasn't right. By the end of the week, I had stopped taking breaks in the back room alone. I kept my phone close even when I wasn't on call, and started noticing little details. The way Greg's eyes followed me, how he seemed to materialize wherever I went. A week later, I tried to confirm his identity with my manager. Greg? I asked, leaning on the counter. Do you know if a new hire by that name has been transferred here? My manager shook her head. Nope, never heard of him. Maybe he's from another store? No, I said, my voice tighter than I intended. I've asked the other departments. No one by that name works here. The realization hit me like a punch. This man wasn't an employee. Everything about him had been a lie. The vest, the name, the casual approach, and yet he had been observing me for days, carefully, without any immediate aggression. That made him more frightening. I started walking differently through the store, always scanning the aisles, checking entrances and exits. My coworkers noticed my tension, but I couldn't explain exactly why I felt unsafe without sounding paranoid. Each time I saw him, he appeared calm, patient, almost like he was studying me, calculating. I started leaving my register slightly before the end of my shift if I was alone, making sure someone was walking with me to the break room. I carried a small flashlight in my bag, keeping it tucked in my jacket. My routine became a form of protection, a way to anticipate his moves without direct confrontation. It all escalated one night while I was stocking shelves in the back room. The store was dim, quiet except for the distant hum of the refrigerators. I had just finished a pallet of paper towels when I heard footsteps approaching rapidly. My heart skipped. Greg? I called nervously. He appeared from the shadows holding a small crowbar in one hand, muttering under his breath. I just want to see you again, he said, calm but intense. His eyes locked on mine in a way that made me freeze. I ran without thinking, slamming the back room door behind me. My hands shook as I grabbed the phone in the office and called security. Within minutes, they arrived, restraining him just outside the break room. He didn't resist, just looked at me, smiling faintly as if he had been expecting this outcome all along. After that night, my manager transferred me off the overnight shift immediately. I couldn't face being alone in the quiet aisles again, couldn't stomach the thought of encountering him with no one around. Even after leaving the overnight shift, I couldn't shake the feeling that he had left a mark on my perception of safety. I became hyper-aware in public, constantly scanning for unusual behavior. I installed a small personal alarm on my keychain, and when I walked to my car after work, I made sure to stay in the well-lit areas of the parking lot. I shared my story with friends and family, emphasizing the subtle ways predators manipulate trust. They were shocked, but it gave me a sense of control to speak openly about the experience. I realized how quickly routine can be exploited, and how easily someone can appear ordinary while harboring dangerous intent. Every shift afterward, I trained myself to notice details. Unfamiliar faces lingering in the aisles, people who asked unnecessary questions, anyone who seemed too helpful. Awareness became my new standard, my shield against a world I had assumed was predictable. Months later, I finally returned to the store during daylight hours, this time accompanied by a coworker. The experience was different. I could navigate without panic, but my instincts remained sharpened. I recognized how much I had grown in vigilance and how crucial it was to trust my gut. I realized the encounter had reshaped more than just my work routine. It had redefined my relationship with public spaces, with strangers, and even with my own sense of confidence. Safety is fragile, often dependent on awareness rather than luck. And while I couldn't undo what had happened, I could carry the lesson forward. Never dismiss warning signs, no matter how ordinary someone may appear. Danger often hides in plain sight, and ordinary appearances can mask harmful intent. Awareness, caution, and trusting your instincts are crucial tools for protecting yourself. Routine alone does not guarantee safety. Vigilance and preparation are your first line of defense against unseen threats. I never thought I'd end up in a situation where survival came down to pure instinct. Yet here I was, 7 months pregnant, standing in the middle of Walmart's electronics aisle, watching storm clouds roll over our small town like a dark wave. The night had started just like any other for me, a long, exhausting shift as a night stalker. Between my second job at the diner and this one, sleep was a luxury I hadn't had in weeks. The storm warnings had been on the radio all day, but I figured a little thunder and rain wouldn't stop me from finishing my inventory. My manager had called in sick, and I'd promised to stay late. Alone, pregnant, and tired, I rolled my eyes at my own stubbornness. Of course it's me tonight, I muttered to myself, pushing a cart stacked with gadgets and video games. Around 11:30 p.m., the lights flickered, then cut out completely. My stomach dropped. Not just because of the darkness, but because my phone screen went black in my hand. I let out a shaky breath. "Great," I whispered. The emergency lights flickered on, dim and orange, barely enough to see the shelves ahead. The wind outside howled through the roof vents, rattling the glass windows. Thunder cracked so loud it made the whole building vibrate. I tried calling the security guard, dialing the front desk repeatedly, but the phone lines were dead. That's when I heard it, the soft echo of footsteps far down the aisle. I froze. My mind raced. Maybe it's the storm, I whispered to myself, but even as I said it, my instincts screamed otherwise. The footsteps continued, slow, deliberate, moving closer. Panic surged through me. I pressed my back against a pallet of bottled water, holding my breath. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaking. Silence. Only the hum of the emergency lights and the storm outside. My eyes darted down the darkened aisles, scanning for anything I could use to defend myself. My heart raced, each beat a drum in my ears. I remembered the emergency exit codes we'd been trained on, the doors that unlocked with a key card. Maybe I could make it out if I timed it right. A crash of falling cans echoed through the store. My pursuer stopped abruptly. I seized the moment, crawling on my hands and knees toward the back exit, trying not to make a sound. My breathing was shallow, my belly pressing against the cold tiles as I prayed no one had seen me. I reached the door, pressed my hand against the handle, and slowly twisted. It gave way, and I stumbled outside into the storm. Rain soaked my hair and clothes instantly. I held my belly, feeling the baby kick softly, and whispered, "We're okay. We're okay." Behind me, the store loomed like a shadow, and I ran across the parking lot toward the streetlights, praying that I wasn't followed. Minutes later, the police arrived, their headlights cutting through the torrential rain. I wrapped myself in a blanket one of the officers offered, trembling as they asked me questions. Someone had broken into the store intending to loot it during the storm, but they hadn't expected a pregnant woman to survive and outsmart them. As I sat in the patrol car shivering, I realized something. Fear was terrifying, yes, but it had also made me fast, sharp, and decisive. That night I learned that courage doesn't roar, it whispers, just as loudly as panic, when you choose to act. 2 weeks before that night, I had been driving home from my second job at the diner, the hum of the engine keeping me company. My body ached constantly, and the baby's kicks were stronger each day. I had been counting the days until maternity leave, dreaming of sleep, meals that weren't cold sandwiches, and the peace of my own bed. At work, my manager, Carla, noticed I was exhausted. "You really don't have to push yourself so hard," she said gently. "You've got a baby coming, Maria. Health comes first." "I can handle it," I said with a weak smile, adjusting my uniform. I've done it before, but inside I knew the truth. Balancing 2 jobs, bills, and my pregnancy was draining me physically and mentally. Still, I couldn't let the store down. I had pride, a stubborn streak, and a sense of responsibility that didn't let me say no. That evening, I left the diner after a long shift and pulled into Walmart's parking lot. The sky was darkening, clouds swirling low. The wind had picked up, and my car rocked slightly as I parked. I checked my phone, storm warnings flashing red. Just a little rain, I told myself, though unease twisted in my stomach. Inside the store, the fluorescent lights hummed, and the smell of freshly stocked merchandise filled the air. I started working aisle by aisle, methodically checking electronics, scanning barcodes, and writing down inventory numbers. Alone in the quiet store, I felt the weight of exhaustion pressing down on me. The hours crawled by. Somewhere between aisle 10 and 11, the lights flickered. I sighed. "Here we go," I muttered. The lights went out completely. My stomach churned and I swallowed hard. Emergency lights glowed faintly, casting long shadows across the shelves. The storm outside howled, rattling the glass doors. At first I told myself the footsteps I heard were just my imagination. A rat, maybe, or the storm making things move. But the sound was deliberate, echoing, and unmistakably human. My heart raced and I crouched behind a pallet listening. "Who's there?" I called out softly. My voice trembled. Silence. Footsteps. Closer. I pressed my back against the pallet, my belly brushing the cold floor. My hands shook as I remembered the emergency exit codes. Maybe I could get out if I timed it right. The storm outside was relentless, the wind whipping against the building. I could hear the sound of breaking glass somewhere far down the aisle. Panic rose like bile in my throat. I whispered to myself, "Stay calm, move slow, don't panic." The footsteps grew louder. My heart pounded like a drum. I peeked around the pallet, trying to make out shapes in the dim emergency lights. A shadow moved, tall, lanky, deliberate. My chest tightened. I crawled, slow and careful, toward the back of the store. Each step felt like a gamble. If I made noise, he would hear me. A stack of canned soup toppled over and I held my breath, frozen as the shadow paused. Then he moved again. I reached the emergency exit, trembling, hand on the door handle. My fingers were slippery from sweat and rain that had leaked in from the storm doors. I twisted the handle slowly, willing it to work. A soft click. The door opened. Rain hit me instantly, soaking my clothes and hair. I ran across the lot, holding my belly, trying not to slip. The sound of my pursuer faded, swallowed by the storm. My lungs burned, but adrenaline pushed me forward. The streetlights were few and dim. I ran toward the nearest house, waving my arms, shouting for help. A neighbor came out, wrapped me in a blanket, and called the police. My body shook uncontrollably as I explained what had happened. The police searched the store, taking evidence and talking to me. They said the intruder had broken in intending to loot, likely hoping the storm would keep anyone away. But I had survived. They praised my calm thinking and fast action. Yet fear lingered. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind outside my window made me jump. I realized that courage and fear exist side by side, each feeding the other. Without fear, I wouldn't have moved as fast. Without courage, fear would have paralyzed me. Months later, I stood in my baby's nursery, rocking my sleeping daughter in my arms. The storm had long passed and life was returning to a semblance of normalcy. I thought about that night, how terrified I had been, how exhausted, how alone. But I also thought about what I had learned. Fear can sharpen instincts. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's action despite it. Strength often comes in small, quiet moments when panic threatens to take over. I had survived not because of luck alone, but because I trusted myself, acted decisively, and never gave up. That night at Walmart taught me that even in darkness, there's a way forward if you're brave enough to take it. True courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act with strength and clarity in the face of it. Life's challenges may come like storms, but inner resolve and quick thinking can carry you through. I've worked nights at the Walmart off Highway 41 for nearly 3 years. Being an assistant manager on the graveyard shift has its perks: less foot traffic, fewer complaints, and a sense of quiet control over the store when most of the world is asleep. But it also comes with its own set of stressors. Security, theft, and the occasional strange encounter aren't uncommon. Yet over time, you learn to push those moments into the back of your mind. That particular night started like any other. The clock read 11:30 p.m., and I had just finished my rounds, checking that aisles were clean, registers stocked, and the night crew on task. I was tired, craving the last cigarette of the night, a small indulgence I'd promised myself after a long week. Stepping outside through the employee door near the loading dock, the smell of diesel and trash hit me immediately. A normal smell I barely noticed anymore. The lot was mostly empty except for a few cars belonging to the overnight staff. Then I saw it. A white cargo van parked near the dumpsters, engine running, lights off. My chest tightened. Deliveries weren't scheduled for that night. Someone shouldn't be out there not alone, not with the engine running, and certainly not with the back doors slightly ajar. I walked closer, keeping a casual distance at first, as if the night air could shield me from danger. That's when I heard it. 2 male voices, low and whispering, and another sound, high-pitched and muffled. My stomach dropped as I realized it was crying. There was a woman inside, trapped, her distress piercing the night. "Okay, stay calm," I whispered to myself, retreating slowly to the store to call our security guard. My hands were shaking, heart hammering in my chest. "This isn't a drill," I muttered under my breath, dialing quickly. Minutes felt like hours as I waited for the security guard, Jim, to arrive. He was older, dependable, and had seen more than his share of late-night weirdness, but even he didn't seem prepared for this. I gestured toward the van once he pulled up, keeping my distance. "Jim, do you see that?" I whispered. He squinted in the dark, his flashlight cutting a beam across the lot. That's not scheduled," he muttered, his voice low. "And it doesn't smell like one of ours." As we approached, I noticed the back door swinging slightly with the movement of the van. My eyes widened when a small arm suddenly reached out from inside before retreating, and the van's engine roared as it sped off into the darkness. Tires squealed on the asphalt, leaving dark streaks in the lot. We sprinted to the edge of the parking lot, but the van was gone in seconds. My mind raced. Who could have been inside? How far had it gone? I could still hear muffled sounds echoing in my head, the whispering, the crying, like it had etched itself into my ears. I called the police, trying to keep calm, giving them the description of the van, its direction of travel, anything that could help. Jim and I stood at the edge of the lot scanning the tree line where it had disappeared. Minutes later, blue and red lights flashed, cutting through the darkness, and officers jumped out with radios and flashlights. The police began tracing the tire marks into the woods behind the Walmart. The ground was wet from a recent rain, making the dark streaks of rubber more visible. I followed at a cautious distance, heart hammering, replaying the image of the woman's arm over and over. "Did you see her?" one officer asked me. I nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, she was, trapped." I couldn't get the words out fully, it sounded too unreal. As they combed the area, they found pieces of torn duct tape caught in the brush. One piece had blood on it, another was stuck to a scarf, a bright-colored item matching a missing person alert from a town 2 exits over. I felt bile rise in my throat. This wasn't random. Someone had planned this. Someone had brought her here intentionally. Jim put a hand on my shoulder, sensing my panic. "It's okay," he said, though his voice betrayed his own unease. "We're going to get her." Officers began widening the search, calling in more units, but the forest was dense, dark, and unforgiving. The only traces were the tire marks and a few scattered personal items. The urgency of the night pressed down on me. I couldn't shake the image of her small, trembling hand reaching out before the doors slammed shut. After the police left, promising to continue the search with K9 units in the morning, I returned to the store. My hands were trembling as I locked the doors behind me. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen. Jim offered to cover for me, but I refused. I needed to be awake, alert, and available if anything happened. That night, I didn't smoke behind the store. I couldn't. I couldn't look at the loading dock without seeing that van, those doors, and that arm. For weeks afterward, every time I stepped outside for a break, I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting the van to reappear. Sleep was fractured. Every siren, every engine outside my window made me tense. I replayed the scene over and over, asking myself if I could have done more, arrived faster, prevented the van from getting away. The helplessness gnawed at me, but I had no answers. Only the memory. Months later, the case remained open, though there were no leads. I quit smoking behind the store entirely. Some things, some sights, don't leave your memory easily. The woman's fate was unknown, but that night had taught me lessons I hadn't expected. Vigilance matters, instincts are vital, and sometimes your presence alone can make a difference. I often think about that evening. How close I came to being just another witness who didn't notice in time. How quickly normal life can turn into something terrifying. And I wonder, every time I see a van parked too long, a shadow out of place, could I intervene in time? Would I notice sooner next time? Life is fragile, and danger can appear unexpectedly. Trusting your instincts, acting decisively, and remaining vigilant can mean the difference between safety and tragedy. Some moments will haunt you forever, but they also teach the value of courage, awareness, and preparedness. I used to think the quiet of night shifts was comforting. There was something peaceful about pushing a pallet of towels down an empty aisle, the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead, and the steady rhythm of my own breathing. I started working at Walmart after college, mostly because it was easy to get in and steady enough to pay rent. Overnight stocking wasn't glamorous, but it had a rhythm, a kind of silence that most people never experience. My shift usually started at 10 and ran until 6 in the morning. By midnight, most of the crew had fallen into a wordless routine. Cut boxes, face shelves, check the radio for calls, repeat. The store always felt half alive, its body asleep, but its lights still on. I was 26, living alone in a small apartment complex just 5 miles from the store. My world revolved around the night, sleeping when everyone else was awake, eating cold dinners at 3 a.m., and listening to true crime podcasts just to stay alert. I didn't think much ever happened in those aisles. You'd be surprised how easy it is to forget you're being watched when your back is turned to the cameras for hours on end. That night started like any other. I clocked in, grabbed my blue Walmart vest from the break room hook and got to work in home goods, my usual section. Around midnight I got hungry and decided to step out for dinner. There was a 24-hour diner across the parking lot that made decent grilled cheese sandwiches and coffee that could wake the dead. I left my vest hanging where I always did, figuring no one would care. When I came back 30 minutes later, my vest was gone. At first I didn't panic. Stuff went missing all the time. Box cutters, pens, even name tags. People borrowed things, forgot to put them back. I figured maybe one of the newer stalkers grabbed my vest without realizing it had my name stitched on the chest. Evan. I checked the racks near the door, under the benches, even behind the vending machine. Nothing. I shrugged it off and went to the supply closet, grabbed one of the spare vests, and got back to work. When I mentioned it to Marcus, one of the older stalkers, he laughed. Someone probably got cold and borrowed it. Happens all the time, man. Yeah, I said, though something about it felt wrong. It wasn't the missing vest. It was how neatly the hook looked, like someone had intentionally removed it. Not tugged off, not dropped. Taken. I forgot about it after a few hours. The night was long, and exhaustion does strange things to the mind. By the time I clocked out, my eyes burned from the lights and my back ached. I drove home in silence, the roads nearly empty. When I got to my apartment building, I almost didn't notice it at first. Sitting on the concrete step in front of my door was a neatly folded blue vest. My name patch faced upward, clean and centered. My stomach dropped. No one from work knew where I lived. I'd never given out my address, never carpooled. The idea that someone from that break room had driven here, found my apartment, and left my vest, like a calling card, made my skin crawl. I stared at it for a long minute, heart pounding, before picking it up with 2 fingers and bringing it inside. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the apartment sounded louder than usual, the refrigerator hum, the water heater ticking. My mind replayed every possible explanation. A prank, a coincidence, maybe someone saw my license plate leaving work. I wanted it to make sense, but it didn't. The next day, I brought the vest back to the store, just to prove it had happened. Rob, my shift lead, looked puzzled. "You sure someone didn't just find it in the parking lot?" he said. "I guess," I lied. "Yeah, maybe." He shrugged and went back to checking inventory. Nobody cared as much as I did, and maybe that was the strangest part. Everyone else moved through the night like sleepwalkers. I felt like the only one awake. The following night, I couldn't focus. Every time I turned down an aisle, I half expected someone to be standing there watching me. Around 3 a.m., I started to feel stupid for being scared of a vest. Still, when I got home that morning, I double-checked the locks on every door. The knock came just after midnight the next evening. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I froze in bed, heart hammering. Then came a voice, soft, low, and far too close. "Evan," the man whispered through the peephole. "I thought you might need this back." I crept toward the door, not daring to breathe. When I looked through the peephole, a man stood there wearing a grimy Walmart vest, my name patch barely visible through the dirt. His grin stretched too wide, his eyes fixed directly on the glass. I stumbled back, grabbed my phone, and called the police. My voice shook so badly that I could barely give my address. When the patrol car arrived, the man was gone. The officer, a young guy named Henson, checked the hallway and the stairwell. "Could be a trespasser," he said. "You get a lot of solicitors or maintenance visits?" "No," I said quietly, and he was wearing my vest. Henson gave me a patient look, the kind you give someone who's exhausted but harmless. "We'll have the complex check the security camera near the lot. Maybe we'll catch a glimpse." They didn't. No one saw a man enter or leave. The camera showed only me stepping out to meet them. Nothing before, nothing after. I took the next night off, claiming I was sick. Truth was, I couldn't stand the thought of walking into that break room again. I stayed home, curtains drawn, the TV on for noise. But every now and then I thought I heard faint footsteps in the hall. Slow, pacing, then silence. By dawn, I decided to quit. The store, the night shifts, all of it. It wasn't worth the feeling that someone had taken an interest in me I never asked for. When I called Rob to tell him, he sighed. "Hate to lose you, Evan. You're one of the reliable ones." "Yeah," I said softly. "I just need to feel safe again." It's been 6 months since I left Walmart. I found a job at a small hardware store, daytime only. The light feels good. The normal hours help. Still, I can't shake certain habits. Checking behind me when I walk to my car, locking my door twice, avoiding anyone wearing a blue vest. Sometimes when I get home, I swear I smell that faint mix of dust and detergent, the scent of the break room. Once I found a receipt from my old store under my windshield wiper. It had no date, no total, just my name, printed clean across the top. I threw it away, but it didn't stop the feeling that someone, somewhere, still knew my schedule. I never saw the man again. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe a drifter found my vest and decided to have some fun. But deep down, I know it wasn't random. He knew where to find me once, and that's once too many. Sometimes when I can't sleep, I think about that night. The smile behind the peephole, the way he said my name like he'd been waiting for it. I still have the vest, folded in a box at the back of my closet. I should throw it out, but I can't. It's a reminder of how close fear can stand to your front door before you finally listen to it. Trust your fear. It exists to protect you. We often brush off unease as paranoia, afraid of looking foolish or dramatic. But instinct is our oldest defense, built on 1,000 quiet warnings. When something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't ignore it, don't explain it away. Safety isn't paranoia, it's awareness. And awareness can save your life long before the danger ever knocks. Working the overnight shift at Walmart was never glamorous, but I had a rhythm to it. From 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. the store was quiet, sometimes eerily so, and the hum of the fluorescent lights became almost meditative after a few hours. I liked the solitude in a way. It gave me time to focus on my tasks, whether it was stocking shelves, reorganizing inventory, or tidying aisles. I'd been working nights for almost 6 months, and over time, I developed a sense for the store's little quirks. The squeak of the freezer doors, the way the automatic doors clicked just before opening, even which aisles tended to be quiet at certain hours. It gave me confidence, made me feel in control in an environment that could sometimes feel endless and overwhelming. That morning, or rather early that day, I was finishing my last round. I'd spent the last hour in electronics, stacking DVD cases and checking shelves. My eyes were heavy, and my back ached from hours of bending and lifting. The clock read 6:55 a.m., and the thought of my bed, warm sheets, and a long shower kept me moving. When I finally clocked out, the parking lot was almost empty. Only a few cars were scattered around, mostly belonging to employees who were working the closing shift. I slid into my car, locking the doors instinctively, and started driving toward the highway. The chill of the early morning air hit my face through the cracked window as I backed out of my spot, still replaying my shift in my head. Then I noticed it. An old pickup, parked near the far end of the lot. At first I dismissed it. Maybe the driver had been waiting for someone or just stopping briefly. But as I pulled onto the main road, the same truck followed, keeping its distance yet matching every turn I made. My stomach dropped. I tried to ignore it, rationalizing. Maybe it's just coincidence. Maybe it's heading the same way. But then it made the same turns I did. Left at the first intersection, right at the next, slowing down when I slowed. Panic crept in. My mind raced through options: drive faster, pull over, call the police. But my exhaustion made it hard to think clearly. I needed to stay calm, stay aware. I decided to test the situation. At the next light, I hesitated before turning left, pretending to check my phone. The pickup mirrored my movements, stopping when I stopped. My heart pounded. This wasn't coincidence. Someone was following me. I considered calling my husband, but my hands were trembling, and I didn't want him to panic. My first priority was to get to a public, well-lit area. That's when I noticed a 24-hour gas station ahead. Relief mixed with fear as I turned into the lot, parking near the front door. I watched through the windshield. The pickup parked at the far edge of the lot, engine still running. The driver sat motionless, watching me, and the sun hadn't even started to rise. I gripped the steering wheel, trying to control the shake in my hands. I ran inside, breathless, and explained the situation to the clerk. He nodded calmly, but with a seriousness that made my stomach tighten. "I'll call the police," he said quietly. "Stay inside." I obeyed, pacing near the soda cooler, ears straining for any sound outside. Minutes felt like hours. The clerk reassured me, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, targeted. Then a police car pulled into the lot. Relief washed over me, but when we stepped outside, the pickup was gone. My stomach sank again. It wasn't gone by coincidence. Whoever it was had anticipated the arrival of help. The officer listened to my account and then glanced at his tablet. "You're not the first," he said, voice low. "We've had reports from the Walmart down the road, same truck, same behavior. Circling the lot after every overnight shift, sometimes sitting for hours. Surveillance cameras caught it multiple times." My pulse spiked. "So, they've been watching the store? Watching employees?" "Exactly," he said. "And now it looks like someone followed you home." We drove back to the Walmart to review the security footage. On camera, the truck appeared multiple times over the past week, moving slowly around the parking lot, its headlights off at times, always parked near the exits and employee vehicles. My name came up on one footage clip walking to my car, almost the exact moment the truck drove nearby. The feeling of violation settled in heavily. I had spent months feeling safe in a routine I knew intimately, but suddenly, that safety felt fragile. Every quiet night, every empty aisle, every drive home could be the beginning of a nightmare. After that night, my routine changed drastically. I started driving different routes home, never leaving the store alone without checking for vehicles nearby. I left the parking lot in pairs when possible and began calling someone to stay on the phone with me during late-night drives. Even at the store, I became hyper-aware. I noticed every car, every shadow near the doors, every unusual sound. Sleep came harder, anxiety gnawed at me, and yet a part of me became sharper, more aware, more ready to act. I began logging every odd occurrence in a notebook, a precaution for myself and for management. Each entry served as a reminder. Vigilance could save lives, and complacency could be dangerous. Weeks passed, and the truck never appeared again after the police increased surveillance and patrolled the area more frequently. I eventually regained some sense of normalcy, but I never fully relaxed during late-night drives or shifts. That experience changed me. I learned that even familiar routines could be vulnerable, that danger could be subtle and patient, and that instincts and proactive measures mattered more than I had realized. Awareness and vigilance are crucial, especially in situations where routine can lull you into complacency. Trust your instincts, act decisively when something feels wrong, and prioritize safety above all else. A moment of caution can prevent a lifetime of regret. Working the night shift at a small-town Walmart was never glamorous, but it paid the bills and kept me out of trouble. I'd lived in Mississippi my whole life, in a town where everyone knew everyone else's business. The streets were quiet at night, except for the occasional barking dog or the hum of a passing car. My shift was 12 a.m. to 7 a.m., and I had come to accept the solitude of the store during those hours. That night, I was assigned to the frozen foods section, a task that required mostly restocking, rotating stock, and keeping the freezers tidy. I liked the quiet, the way the hum of the freezers sounded like a heartbeat in the dark. By 2 a.m., I had stocked the last pallet of ice cream sandwiches, wiped down the shelves, and was beginning to organize frozen vegetables when I heard it. A sharp slam. The back freezer door had closed with a bang. My stomach clenched. "Hello?" I whispered, my voice trembling more than I expected. I knew I was alone. The only other person scheduled on the floor was the night manager, who wouldn't be on the electronics side until 3 a.m. I approached the freezer cautiously. Frost lined the door handle and the cold air made my breath fog. As I pushed the door open, I noticed something odd. There were footprints in the frost, barefoot prints, leading between the shelves. My mind raced. "No way. Someone's inside," I muttered under my breath, inching closer. I held the scanner in one hand like a weapon, the other pressed against the cold metal of the freezer shelf. "Hey!" I called out louder this time. "Is someone there?" The only reply was the low hum of the freezers and my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. The footprints led between the shelves, then abruptly disappeared behind a pallet rack. I froze, thinking maybe someone had slipped behind it, but the back door to the loading dock was still locked from the inside. There was no other way in or out. I tried rationalizing it. Maybe a coworker had forgotten to clock out. Maybe I was seeing things. I shook my head. I'm not imagining this, I whispered. My fingers clenched the scanner. The freezer's humming seemed louder, almost oppressive. As I turned to leave, my nerves on edge, a motion sensor light flicked on behind me. I whipped around, and the freezer door creaked open again. A draft? Maybe. But then I saw it. A hand gripping the handle from inside. My blood ran cold. I bolted toward the office, fumbling with the walkie-talkie to call the night manager. Matt, get over here, someone's in the freezer, I yelled. Seconds felt like hours. When the manager and security arrived, the freezer was wide open. They searched the area, their flashlights cutting through the cold mist, but there was nothing. Only one bare footprint pressed into the frost. I'd worked nights at Walmart for almost a year, but I had been stocking freezers even longer at a small grocery store down the street. I knew how empty a store could feel when the streets outside were dark, and how easy it was for your imagination to turn shadows into figures. Most nights were uneventful, just routine, monotony, and the occasional misfired alarm from the automatic doors. That particular week had been stressful. My dad had been sick, so I'd been driving him to appointments during the day before heading into work at night. Sleep was fragmented, and my mind often wandered while I moved pallets of frozen goods. On the night before the freezer incident, I remember hearing stories from co-workers about ghostly sightings in the empty Walmart after hours. Normally, I laughed it off. Mississippi towns love to tell tall tales. Come on, you're telling me nobody's ever stayed late alone without seeing something weird? One co-worker said, grinning. Yeah, like a ghost or a monster, I joked. Right, because that's totally rational. Even so, those stories replayed in my mind as I walked through the empty aisles that night. There was something about the way the fluorescent lights flickered, the way the cold air from the freezers mixed with the humid night air, that made shadows stretch and twist in unnatural ways. As I returned to the frozen food section, I reminded myself to breathe. It's just your brain, I muttered. But when I saw those barefoot prints in the frost, I knew this was no trick of the light. Something had been there, and it had left a mark. The following day, I tried to talk to my night manager, Matt, about what had happened. He raised his eyebrows. You're sure it wasn't just the AC vent? He asked. I'm telling you, Matt, there were footprints. Barefoot leading through the frost. I'm not crazy. He sighed. Look, I believe you, but no one else saw anything, right? Nope, I was alone. And the hand, I saw it, I swear. Matt shook his head. All right, we'll keep an eye on it, but there's nothing on the cameras. I tried to go back to normal work, but something had changed. Every time I passed the freezer aisle, I felt a chill, a gnawing tension at the back of my neck. I started hearing creaks and bangs that couldn't be explained. The hum of the freezers sounded louder, almost like whispers. I told myself I was tired, overworked, letting stress make me paranoid. But every time I saw that single footprint burned into the ice in my memory, I felt uneasy. I dreaded returning to work the following week. My stomach twisted as I walked through the sliding doors, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Alone on the floor again, I stocked frozen vegetables, pretending not to notice the shadows moving in the corners of my vision. Around 2 a.m., the same slamming sound echoed down the aisle. My heart raced. I froze. Footprints appeared again in the frost. Barefoot, same as before. My breath fogged as I whispered, "Not again." I grabbed the nearest broom handle and approached cautiously. The footprints led toward the back of the freezer, but again the door was locked from the inside. And again, the motion sensor light flicked on. I froze. A hand appeared on the door handle, gripping it from inside. This time I didn't hesitate. I bolted toward the office, shouting for help. Matt came running, flashlight in hand. "There's nothing here," he yelled, but I didn't wait to argue. The footprint remained, clear and perfect, pressed into the frost. After multiple nights of investigation, security and management concluded that no one had broken in. The cameras showed nothing unusual, and the locks were secure. But the footprint remained a mystery. I never saw the figure again, and eventually, life returned to normal. Yet the memory haunted me. I realized that fear is a strange thing. It can make you hyper-aware, push you to your limits, and even save your life. That night taught me to respect instinct, trust what my senses told me, and act decisively when something felt wrong. Fear is not always the enemy. It can sharpen your senses, protect you, and teach you resilience. What we cannot always explain may exist outside our understanding, but we can prepare ourselves to survive and respond. My name's Jake, and I'd been on graveyard shifts for 3 years, wandering the fluorescent-lit aisles while the rest of the world slept. Most nights were uneventful. You check the doors, rotate through the aisles, watch the cameras, and occasionally deal with a customer who'd wandered in from the night streets. The worst part was the monotony. It made your imagination wander. Too much quiet, and you start seeing things that aren't there. I chalked it up to that mostly until the night everything changed. It was a Tuesday, and the clock on my office wall blinked 2:45 a.m. I was sipping lukewarm coffee and scrolling through the camera feeds when something caught my eye. A man standing in the toy aisle, motionless, staring straight up at the dome camera. The fluorescent lights made his figure look almost painted in gray. No cart, no bags, nothing. Just him. I called Mike, my co-worker who did stock shifts in the back, over the radio. "Mike, check aisle 12, there's someone standing by the toys," I said. "Jake, it's 2:45 in the morning. I just walked past there 10 minutes ago, aisle's empty," Mike replied, his voice carrying that faint amusement he always had when I called him paranoid. "Just check again, please," I insisted. A few minutes later, Mike's voice came over the walkie, softer this time. "Nothing, man, nobody. You're probably just seeing things in the camera glare. You need more sleep." I frowned, staring back at the monitor. The man was still there. He lifted his hand and waved. Just waved. A chill ran down my spine. "Mike," I said, my voice tighter than I wanted. "He's waving at the camera." There was a pause on the line. "Jake, I don't see anything. You sure it's not a reflection or a shadow?" I didn't answer. I grabbed the flashlight from the desk and my boots squeaked against the tile floor as I made my way to aisle 12. The store was empty, quiet but for the faint hum of the refrigeration units. As I rounded the corner, the aisle was empty. No man. But something felt off. Every single doll on the shelves, Barbies, action figures, stuffed animals, was turned to face the aisle. Every single one. My stomach twisted, a cold knot forming in my chest. I crouched to adjust a plush bear, then straightened up and shined my flashlight down the aisle. Nothing. I returned to the office, heart still racing. The monitor that had shown the man now displayed only static. I rebooted the system, but the feed never returned. The man, whoever or whatever he was, vanished. The rest of my shift passed in a haze. I double-checked doors, retraced the aisles, and even stayed near the cameras longer than usual. Nothing. By 6:30 a.m., the sun was creeping through the big glass doors, and I was counting the minutes until I could go home and shake off the feeling that someone, or something, had been watching me. I kept replaying the footage in my mind. There had been no reflection, no trick of light. That wave was deliberate. And the dolls. I couldn't explain the dolls. By the time my shift ended, I promised myself I'd forget about it. I had no evidence, no photos, no video, just a memory that made my skin crawl. But that night planted a seed, and I had no idea how much it would grow. The next few nights were worse. Every time I entered aisle 12, I felt a prickling sensation on the back of my neck, like someone was standing just behind me. I started leaving the fluorescent lights on, even in aisles I wasn't monitoring. Mike noticed my jumpiness. "You're twitchy, man. Coffee running low or something?" he asked one night as I paced the office floor. Not funny, Mike. Something was on the camera. And now, every time I walk past aisle 12, it feels off. He chuckled nervously. Jake, you're imagining it. Nobody's there. This place has been empty for 3 hours. But I couldn't shake the feeling. Even when I wasn't at the toy aisle, I kept looking at the monitors. Shadows seemed to move differently. A reflection here, a glitch there, but nothing concrete. My mind started to ration logic, trying to convince me it was a technical glitch. Then it happened again 2 nights later. I was sipping coffee in the office when I noticed a movement in aisle 12. A figure, blurry at first, appeared at the far end. He didn't move like a normal person. No stride, no gestures, just hovering. My heart skipped. I called out, "Hello, sir, can I help you?" No answer. I grabbed the walkie. "Mike, come check aisle 12 now, please." Silence. Static on the other end. I approached cautiously, flashlight in hand. Every toy now faced the aisle again, neatly turned. My pulse was racing, sweat prickling my forehead. I scanned the shelves, the floor, the end caps. Nothing. But the feeling of being watched was suffocating. When I returned to the office, the feed flickered and went black again. I started bringing my laptop to work, monitoring the cameras through the security software, trying to record anything unusual. But every time I left the aisle or blinked, the figure vanished. The footage was blank, corrupted, or just static. No one believed me. Mike shrugged. "Maybe it's your imagination, man. Happens when you work nights too long." I wanted to believe him, I really did. But when I went home and closed the door behind me, I still saw him, motionless, staring from the corner of my mind, waving. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the building, every car passing outside sounded like footsteps approaching the toy aisle. My apartment felt small, cramped, and too bright, too different from the fluorescent world of Walmart where the watcher seemed to linger. By the end of the week, I started skipping lunches, pacing the store more often, and documenting every odd occurrence. The manager noticed. "Jake, are you okay?" she asked. "You've been jittery lately, running around the store." "Just overstressed, I guess." "Long hours." I lied, forcing a smile. It wasn't stress. It wasn't exhaustion. Whatever I'd seen in aisle 12 wasn't a glitch. It wasn't a reflection, and it wasn't human, or at least, it didn't behave like one. I decided to investigate on my own. After my shift one night, I stayed behind for an extra hour. The store was empty, the fluorescent lights buzzing in their usual monotone. I checked every security feed, rewound footage, and tried to catch a glimpse of him. I set up my laptop in the office, recording each camera feed for playback. I wanted proof, something undeniable, something I could show Mike or the manager. Hours passed. Then, at 2:43 a.m., he appeared. Not blurry this time, clear, solid, standing in aisle 12, and he waved. I froze. My fingers shook over the keyboard. I muted the live feed and played the footage back frame by frame. Nothing. Frame by frame, the aisle was empty. The toys? All facing the aisle as if they'd been posed. I checked the other cameras. No figure anywhere. Only aisle 12 had him. Only my live feed. I left the office to confront the aisle directly, feeling the hairs on my arms rise. Every step echoed. I reached the end of the aisle, empty. I turned slowly, flashlight scanning the shelves. The dolls, the stuffed animals, the action figures, all facing me. But no man. I backed away, and my foot caught on something. I looked down. A single small toy figure, an action figure, head turned upward. I hadn't moved it. The others were still aligned perfectly. I picked it up. The fingers were sticky, slightly warm, like someone had handled it recently. My stomach churned. I dropped it. It fell, face up, staring at me. I ran back to the office, heart pounding, adrenaline surging. By the time I reached the desk, the feed was gone again. Static. Something was wrong. Something had chosen me. I could feel it. Sleep deprivation and fear were starting to eat at me. My coworkers noticed my paleness, my jittery movements. One night, Mike followed me through the store. "You need to slow down, man. You're scaring yourself," he said, flashlight in hand. "You saw it, right? You know the dolls, the aisle, the figure?" I asked, voice shaking. "Nope. Empty aisle, Jake. Calm down," he said, clearly uncomfortable. I almost yelled. I almost showed him the footage. But the moment I pulled out my laptop, the figure appeared again on the monitor. This time it waved and the static returned immediately. Mike jumped back. "What the hell is that?" he whispered. "I don't know," I admitted. "But it's real, and it's only visible to me." We tried everything. Resetting cameras, changing angles, even removing some of the toys from the shelves. Nothing stopped it. The figure always returned. That night I stayed late, talking to him out loud, desperate. "I don't know what you want. I don't want trouble," I said, pacing the office. "If you just leave, I'll leave you alone." No response. Only static. Weeks passed. I stopped trying to record him. I stopped trying to explain. I kept to my routines, avoided aisle 12 as much as possible, and tried to ignore the lingering feeling that I was being watched. Eventually, I accepted it wasn't something I could fight. I wasn't sure if it was a ghost, a glitch, or something else entirely. But it taught me something. Fear isn't always about the obvious danger. Sometimes, it's about the things you can't see or understand, the presence you feel without proof. The aisle remained, the figure remained, but I learned to live with it. I stayed alert, cautious, but I stopped trying to conquer it. It wasn't mine to defeat. I'd learned that sometimes you don't need answers to survive. You just need awareness, respect, and caution. Not all dangers are visible and not all threats can be proven. Respect the unknown, stay vigilant, and trust your instincts, even when others dismiss them. Awareness and caution are often more powerful than certainty. That night started like any other. I clocked in at 10:45 p.m., grabbed my name tag, and checked in with Carl, the night manager. "Everything good tonight?" he asked, sipping his coffee in the office. "Yeah, just me on the floor tonight, right?" I replied, adjusting my stocking cart. "Yep, it's quiet. Should be a boring shift," Carl said with a grin. I laughed. That's exactly how I like it. I started down aisle 12, stocking cleaning supplies. It was about 2 a.m., and the store was empty, except for the occasional flicker of the security camera feed in the office. I liked this part of the job, the quiet hum of the lights, the faint scent of floor cleaner mixed with cardboard, and the rhythm of arranging bottles and boxes. It was almost meditative. Then, out of nowhere, the sound of shattering glass made my stomach drop. The crash came from the electronics section at the far end of the store. My heart leapt into my throat. "What the hell?" I muttered under my breath, grabbing my flashlight from my belt. I ran toward the sound, weaving between carts and shelves. My mind raced. Could it be a customer? A broken display? My pulse pounded as I rounded the corner and froze. A man, dark hoodie, jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low, was struggling to shove a flat-screen TV into a duffel bag. The sheer audacity of it made me stumble backward slightly. "Hey, stop right there!" I shouted, my voice cracking. He froze. Then, like a scene from some movie I'd never wanted to star in, he pulled a small pistol from his waistband and pointed it at me. Time slowed. My stomach dropped. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my ears. Every training session I'd ever had in safety protocols vanished from my mind. I ducked instinctively behind a display of vacuum cleaners, the metal and plastic giving me some semblance of cover. "Don't move," the man barked, his voice low and steady. I crouched, breath shallow, praying he didn't notice me. The store's fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting harsh shadows across the aisle. My mind scrambled for a plan, for a rational thought, for anything other than fear. Then came the shot. A sharp, deafening crack that echoed off the walls and through my chest. I flinched, pressed myself deeper behind the display and peered over cautiously. The man was bolting toward the exit, leaving the duffel bag empty and the flat screen still on the ground. I stayed frozen for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. The shot hadn't hit me, but it had hit something. I inched closer and saw the shattered remains of a mannequin display, the plastic and fake clothing torn apart by the bullet. I radioed Carl in a trembling voice. "Carl, he had a gun. He shot a mannequin. He's gone. He ran." Carl's voice was calm but tense. "Stay put, Jake. I'm locking down the store and calling the police." The sound of sirens in the distance eventually replaced the ringing in my ears. But even after the man was gone, the store felt different. I couldn't shake the adrenaline, the awareness that someone had pointed a gun at me, not at a mannequin, not at a display, at me. The police came, took statements, examined the camera footage. They confirmed what I already knew. The man had fled, shooting randomly at the mannequin, leaving no clear motive beyond chaos. They said he might be back or he might not. There was no way to know. By the end of my shift, Carl told me to take a few days off from the floor and focus on lighter duties. I agreed silently. The thought of being alone on the night shift after what I'd seen was unbearable. That night at home, I couldn't sleep. The flash of the gun, the randomness of the shot, the way he'd pointed it at me, it replayed in my mind over and over. And even as the sun rose, the fear lingered, like a shadow that refused to go away. The next week, I was assigned to restocking small aisles near the front, away from electronics, away from wide open spaces where someone could ambush me. My coworkers avoided the night shift entirely after hearing what happened. It wasn't that they were scared of me, they were scared of being in the store at 2 a.m. in the middle of nowhere. Even with lights blazing and security cameras everywhere, the thought of him lurking in the shadows kept me on edge. I double-checked every aisle before I entered it, tested the emergency alarms, and always kept my walkie within reach. "Jake, you look tense," Carl said one night. He was leaning against the break room counter, sipping coffee. "Can't help it," I admitted. "Every noise makes me jump. I see someone in the corner of my eye and my stomach drops." "You did the right thing," he said. "Most people freeze, some panic. You ducked and stayed safe. That counts for a lot." I nodded, but his reassurance barely reached the pit of anxiety that had taken root. I still replayed the night over in my head. The sound of glass, the flash of the gun, the mannequin. It was like a film stuck on loop. One night, I was restocking cleaning supplies, scanning the shelves for misplaced items, when I noticed a small hole in the security camera feed. Static for a split second. My chest tightened. Was it possible he'd tampered with the system? I shook my head, trying to be rational. Probably a glitch, I told myself. But the fear had settled in permanently. Even when the store was full during the day, I'd glance at the electronics aisle and feel my pulse quicken. The thought of the man returning haunted me. He had no apparent motive beyond chaos. That randomness made him more dangerous in my mind than any planned robbery. The police investigated for weeks. They reviewed security footage, analyzed the bullet's trajectory, and questioned witnesses, including me. "You were lucky it was a mannequin," Detective Rivera said. "He was patient, professional. If it had been a person, things could have been much worse." "I know," I admitted, gripping my hands together. "But even knowing that, the randomness of it, it's what gets me. Why shoot a mannequin? Why point it at me at all?" He shrugged. "Some people just do things for the thrill, not logic. Criminals aren't always rational." I wanted to argue, to demand a reason, but he was right. Some people operated without reason, and it was terrifying. The detectives encouraged the store to upgrade cameras and security measures. They also advised that I take a break from night shifts. I tried to comply, but returning to normalcy was harder than I imagined. Weeks later, Carl let me resume normal night shifts. The electronics aisle still triggered panic, so I walked it with care, checking the corners, testing the alarms, and keeping my flashlight ready. One night, alone and quiet, I took a deep breath and forced myself to face the aisle. Nothing happened. No man, no gun, no chaos, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the faint scent of plastic and cardboard. I realized fear had been controlling me more than the event itself. I couldn't undo what happened, but I could control how I responded. I started documenting every incident, practicing situational awareness, and reminding myself of my training. By confronting the aisle slowly and methodically, I regained a fraction of confidence. The fear never completely left, but it no longer dominated every thought. Months passed. The man never returned. Walmart upgraded cameras, reinforced security, and I continued working night shifts. My coworkers gradually came back to the night schedule, though with a bit more caution. I still see that moment in my mind, the glint of the gun, the randomness of the shot, the adrenaline rushing through me. But I've learned to live with it. It changed me, made me more vigilant, more aware, and more respectful of the unpredictability of life. Life is unpredictable and danger doesn't always follow logic. We can't control everything, but we can control how we respond. Awareness, preparation, and caution are more valuable than fear, and sometimes surviving the chaos is the only victory we need. I had no illusions about making friends. Night shifts weren't exactly known for camaraderie. Still, I felt a certain pride in the job. Most people never saw the store after hours, didn't know the routine of restocking shelves, handling returns, or quietly dealing with the stray shopping carts that somehow ended up in the parking lot by the time you closed. I started working nights in the spring. The store was half lit, the fluorescent bulbs flickering now and then, buzzing softly over the aisles. You get used to it. You even start to like the hum. That hum is honest in a strange way. There's nothing hiding behind it. It doesn't judge you. By the end of my first week, I had learned the little rhythms of the place. Which aisles creaked under too much weight, which freezers hummed too loud, which doors stuck and which ones slid open too fast. I liked routine. It made the world feel smaller, manageable. It was on one of those first shifts that I heard people talk about Carl. Not firsthand, of course. I'd never met him, but I had caught snippets from coworkers. Carl was a fixture, one of the stock clerks had said. Even when he was slow, he made everyone feel welcome. I swear, the guy could make anyone's day. He's gone a year now, another chimed in. Hard to believe. The store just isn't the same without him. From what I gathered, Carl had been the greeter. Everyone knew him. Friendly, soft-spoken, always in his blue vest. He was the kind of man who seemed born to make others feel seen, even if he himself wasn't much for conversation beyond a warm smile and that same greeting every day. Welcome to Walmart. I didn't think much of it at first. Old employees leave, new ones take over. That's the way the world works. But there was something about the way people talked about Carl, almost reverently, like he'd been more than just an employee. He'd been a presence, part of the store's personality. On my fourth night, something happened that shook that easy rhythm. It was around 4 a.m. The parking lot was empty, save for a delivery truck lazily idling near the entrance. I was stocking paper towels in aisle 9 when I noticed movement from the corner of my eye. A figure by the sliding doors. A man stood there, smiling, hands folded politely, the blue vest of a greeter draped over his shoulders. The logo was outdated, one I'd never seen, but the smile was warm, familiar. He waved at me, slow and deliberate. "Welcome to Walmart," he said, his voice soft but carrying, almost distant. I froze. My pulse jumped. I glanced at the register area where the night manager sometimes lingered. Surely this had to be a new hire, some older guy who had decided to work nights. I wiped my hands and approached him. "Hey, do you need help with anything?" I asked, trying to sound casual. But the man didn't respond further. He just smiled again. And as I stepped closer, the automatic doors slid open. I blinked, and he was gone. Empty air. Only the quiet hum of the store. I checked around. No one in sight. Nothing out of place. My coworker came up, saw the confusion on my face, and laughed it off. "You okay?" she asked. "Thought I saw you talking to thin air there." I nodded, not wanting to sound crazy. "Yeah, just a little tired, I guess." That night, sleep was impossible. I kept seeing that smile in the back of my mind, hearing that warm voice. "Welcome to Walmart." It echoed in my head long after I left the store. By my second week, I had started noticing the little things about the overnight shift that nobody talks about. Doors that click at the wrong time. Freezers that hum louder when the wind picks up. Footsteps that echo even when you're sure you're alone. It was the middle of the night, somewhere between 2 and 3 a.m. I was rearranging canned goods in aisle 4 when I heard it. Slow, deliberate footsteps on the linoleum, like someone was walking from the front of the store toward the back. I paused, thinking it was one of the Night Stalkers. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding weirdly loud in the emptiness. No answer. Just the footsteps, slow, soft, measured. I went toward the entrance. Empty. Doors locked. No movement outside. The security cameras didn't show anyone approaching, and the parking lot was still. My chest tightened, a nervous laugh threatening to escape. "Okay," I whispered to myself. "Just nerves. You're new. You've been on night shifts a week. Calm down." It happened again the next night, and the night after that. Each time, footsteps in places they shouldn't be. Each time, the same faint, almost polite greeting. "Welcome to Walmart." One night I decided to confront it. I waited by the entrance pretending to check the doors. And there he was again. The blue vest, outdated logo, the slow wave, the warm smile. I swallowed hard. "Sir, do you work here now?" He didn't answer. He just nodded, and I could swear his eyes held recognition, like he remembered me, though I had never met him. I stepped closer. Doors slid open, and he vanished again. By now, the story of Carl started creeping into my consciousness. I mentioned him to my coworker Sarah the next morning. "You mean Carl?" she said, eyebrows raised. He passed away about a year ago. Funny you mention it, though. That's exactly what he used to say every morning, word for word. I felt the blood drain from my face. He would say it even at 4 a.m. sometimes, she added. Some people swear they still hear him. That night I tried reasoning with myself. Exhaustion, imagination, stress. Maybe that was it. But deep down, I knew exhaustion didn't make someone appear in full uniform, smile, and speak a sentence only one person in history had said in that exact way. Curiosity got the better of me. I convinced the night manager to let me review security footage from the early morning hours. The idea of seeing him on tape was both terrifying and exhilarating. I sat in the small security office, coffee in hand, the hum of the monitors filling the silence. Sarah joined me. "Look," I said, pointing to the timestamp, 4:03 a.m. The doors opened. A shadow lingered, as if someone had been standing there, but nothing appeared on the screen. No movement, no body, just the doors opening. Sarah's eyes widened. "You're not making this up, right?" "I swear," I said. "I don't know what this is. But it's him. It has to be." We watched footage from other nights. Same thing. Doors open, no one on camera. And the greeting, well, the greeting isn't captured on video, but the memory of it, how it echoed in the empty store, it was unmistakable. I went home that morning with a hollow feeling. I sat on my couch staring at the ceiling. Carl had passed, and yet somehow he was still here, lingering in the empty aisles, keeping the store's routine alive. It was unsettling, but there was something comforting in it too. The encounters continued. I started leaving notes by the entrance, speaking aloud to him as if talking to the air could somehow make sense of it. "Carl, I see you," I whispered one night. "I know you're here. I don't know why, but I'm listening." Nothing moved. The lights hummed, and then, faintly, I heard it again. The greeting. Slow, warm, familiar. I started staying later after shifts, organizing shelves alone, talking quietly. At first I felt foolish, but over time it became a ritual, a way to honor him, to acknowledge the man who had made so many people feel welcome. I began to notice how much I had been ignoring the small kindnesses in life. Carl had made a habit of it, a greeting, a smile, a slow nod. And here I was, stressed, anxious, always in a hurry. Maybe Carl's presence was reminding me of that simple humanity. By the end of my second month, I had stopped trying to explain it. Carl's presence was no longer a frightening mystery. It was a quiet, steady thing in the store. I greeted him each night, acknowledged him, and in return, the footsteps and voices became less startling, more like company. I started to understand that sometimes people leave their mark in ways you don't expect. Carl hadn't passed entirely. His warmth lingered, not as a haunting to scare people, but as a gentle reminder to slow down, be kind, and notice those around you. One night I stood by the doors sipping my coffee and whispered, "Thanks, Carl. I see you." The doors slid open. I smiled. No fear this time, just acknowledgement. Sometimes the people who touch our lives don't leave in ways we expect. They linger in memories, in habits, in echoes of kindness. The lesson isn't fear of the unknown, but awareness. Kindness, presence, and warmth can resonate long after someone is gone. Life is fragile. The small gestures we make matter far more than we realize. The store quieted down after midnight. The fluorescent lights humdrum and steady, and the aisles empty enough that I could restock without bumping into a crowd of customers. It gave me time to think, to focus, and even to notice the people around me. Jake had been working nights for a few months when I started. There was something about him, calm, reliable, and genuinely kind, that made the long shifts easier to handle. He had a way of noticing when someone was struggling, a quick joke or a small gesture that made the night less lonely. I couldn't deny it. I'd started to like him. The problem wasn't just me. Over the past few weeks, I noticed Carla, another stock associate who seemed unusually present. She was friendly, sure, but sometimes her behavior felt competitive, almost territorial. She lingered around Jake, asking for help with trivial tasks, laughing a little too loudly at his jokes. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe I was just imagining things, but the uneasy feeling didn't go away. It was around 11:30 p.m. on a Wednesday, and the store had thinned out considerably. I was assigned to the dairy aisle, stacking milk cartons and checking expiration dates. The hum of the refrigerators and the occasional overhead announcement filled the silence. Jake had gone to the back to check inventory in the storage room, leaving me alone. I didn't notice Carla at first. I was concentrating on rearranging a row of yogurts when a shadow moved in the corner of my eye. I looked up, and there she was, smiling. But it wasn't a warm, friendly smile. It was sharp, calculating, predatory. My stomach sank. "Hey," she whispered, stepping closer. "You know, Jake only cares about me, not you. You should really understand your place." I froze for a second, heart racing. I don't know what you mean," I said, keeping my voice calm. Her smile widened, and she advanced a step. "Oh, come on. I see the way you look at him. You really think he notices you like I do?" I backed up instinctively, pressing against the metal shelves, my mind racing. The aisle felt suddenly narrow, the fluorescent lights harsh and bright, making the white of the milk cartons almost blinding. "You need to stop," I said firmly, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm not doing anything to you or Jake, just leave me alone." Instead, she lunged. Her hands reached toward me, trying to shove me into the cold metal shelves. My adrenaline spiked. I ducked to avoid her push and instinctively grabbed a nearby crate of yogurt, holding it in front of me like a shield. "Jake!" I shouted, voice cracking with fear. Her eyes widened in surprise, and she bolted down the next aisle, disappearing into the shadows. I sank to the floor, heart hammering, shaking but unharmed. When Jake returned a few minutes later, he found me sitting on the floor of the dairy aisle, still clutching the crate of yogurt. His face went pale. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked, kneeling beside me. She tried to push me," I stammered, finally letting myself take a deep breath. "Carla. She cornered me. Said you only cared about her." Jake's jaw tightened. "Stay right here. Don't move." He stood scanning the aisle and the store around us. "I'll make sure she doesn't come back." For the next hour he stayed by my side, keeping a careful watch while I finished my task. The sense of safety he provided was immediate, though the adrenaline hadn't fully faded. We quietly discussed what had happened, and he made a mental note to speak with management. Security reviewed the surveillance cameras, confirming the incident. Carla had followed me down the aisle, trying to intimidate me, before fleeing when I called for help. The footage made it undeniable. She had acted aggressively, crossing a line that could have resulted in serious injury. After speaking with the night manager, I was given options: switch shifts, always work with a partner, or continue, but with increased oversight. I chose to keep my shifts, but I insisted on a partner whenever Jake wasn't on the floor. The manager understood, emphasizing that safety came first. The days after the incident were strange. I avoided Carla when possible, and any interaction was minimal and professional. She seemed aware that management had watched the footage and that her actions had consequences. I noticed subtle tension in the aisles, the way she lingered around me, trying to act casual, but failing. I kept working closely with Jake whenever possible. It wasn't just comfort. It was a conscious decision to ensure I felt safe and supported. The bond between us strengthened in those nights, not romantically yet, but as trust built on shared experience and vigilance. Despite feeling safer with Jake nearby, I remained cautious. Every time I entered the dairy aisle alone, I remembered the fear that had gripped me. The sense of danger that can emerge from something as simple as workplace jealousy didn't fade quickly. Weeks later, the store began to feel normal again. I learned to navigate the aisles with confidence, always aware of my surroundings, always ready to act. The incident had taught me the importance of trusting my instincts, speaking up immediately, and calling for help when necessary. Jake and I had even joked quietly about the incident, his calm demeanor making me feel grounded. "Next time I'll keep her away for good," he whispered, flashing a half smile. I laughed, knowing that the humor was our way of reclaiming a sense of normalcy. By the time months had passed, I felt secure in the workplace again. Carla had been disciplined, shifts rearranged, and I had a partner for solo work whenever possible. I realized that jealousy and unchecked emotions can turn even ordinary nights into dangerous situations. The experience had left scars, yes, but it had also taught resilience, courage, and the importance of clear boundaries. I never expected the overnight shift at Walmart to feel like stepping into another world. During the day, the store was a rush of fluorescent light, carts clattering, kids screaming, and managers barking orders. But at night, it was something else entirely. The aisles stretched out like corridors in a museum, the hum of freezers and fluorescent bulbs replacing the usual chaos. You could hear your own heartbeat if you paid attention. I'd started working nights just to pay bills while finishing my last year of college. It wasn't glamorous, and I knew it wouldn't be exciting, but it was steady. There was something comforting in the routine, the quiet, the solitude, the way the night made every small task feel more meaningful. I learned which aisles creaked under weight, which lights flickered at certain times, which freezers groaned in rhythm with the wind outside. People often asked why anyone would want to work nights, and I used to joke, because ghosts are better company than customers. I didn't mean it seriously, of course. At least, I didn't think I did. It was during my third week on the shift that I first noticed her. I was restocking toys around 3 a.m. The aisle's empty except for the occasional distant clatter of a falling can or the soft hum of the store's heating system. I was on my knees putting dolls on the lower shelves in aisle 14 when I felt a presence. There she was, a woman standing perfectly still in front of a wall of dolls. Her cart was empty. I assumed she was a late-night shopper. "Excuse me, ma'am?" I asked, trying to sound polite but not too alarmed. "Do you need help finding something?" She didn't answer. I stepped closer. That's when she turned her head toward me. Her eyes were wide, unblinking, and she whispered, almost like a shadow carried her voice. "They don't blink when the lights go out." Before I could respond, the overhead lights flickered. I blinked and she was gone. I spun toward the end of the aisle. No one. The cart was still there, upright and empty. But the woman, whatever she had been, was gone. I shook my head, telling myself I must have been tired. Maybe I was imagining it. But the unease didn't leave me. Even after my shift ended, I couldn't get her words out of my head. The next night, I mentioned it to Todd, a stock clerk who'd been working nights for over 10 years. "Yeah," he said, almost too casually. "Aisle 14. You're not the first. Cameras have caught someone there a few times, just standing. No one ever sees them come in or leave. Security checked. Nothing. It's weird." My stomach tightened. "You're serious?" "Yep. Happened a few nights a week, usually between 2 and 4 a.m. No explanation. Some of us just avoid that aisle when we can." And that's how I learned nights at Walmart weren't just quiet. They were different. Things happened when the store emptied out, when the hum of fluorescent lights became the only sound in the world, when the line between what's real and what's imagined seemed to blur. The next night I approached aisle 14 cautiously. My flashlight bounced off the linoleum floor, casting long shadows over the empty shelves. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, a trick of fatigue. But then I saw her again. Same position, same unblinking stare. Her cart was empty, like it had been the night before. Ma'am?" I said, stepping closer. "Do you need help?" Her head turned slowly, almost too deliberately, and her lips moved. "They don't blink when the lights go out." My voice caught in my throat. I wanted to ask what she meant, but before I could form words, the lights flickered, and she vanished. Again. I rushed to the end of the aisle. The camera above me didn't show her walking in or out. Todd was right. There was nothing on footage, just an empty aisle and an abandoned cart. I stayed by the entrance of the aisle, tense, my heart pounding. "Who are you? What do you want?" I whispered. My voice felt stupid in the silence. Then I noticed something strange. The dolls on the shelves, the ones closest to where she had been, were all slightly angled toward the aisle as if someone had been watching from there. "Okay," I muttered to myself. I'm not crazy. It's just... something weird is happening." I left a note on the cart, thinking it was ridiculous, but it felt right. "If you're real, show yourself." Nothing happened, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she had a purpose, a message, something she needed to tell me. I decided to try recording the aisle on my phone the next night. If this was just some trick of my mind, I wanted proof. I set up my phone leaning against the cart, aimed at the doll display. Then I stepped back, holding my breath. Hours passed. The store was dead silent, the only sounds the hum of freezers and my own slow breathing. Then, around 3 a.m., I saw movement from the corner of my eye. She appeared. The same pale dress, same unblinking eyes. She didn't move. She just stood there, staring at the dolls. I raised my phone. I don't know what you want," I said softly. Her lips barely moved. "They don't blink when the lights go out." And then, as if the air itself swallowed her, she vanished. I checked the footage the next day. The phone recorded her for a split second, a blurry figure, but then nothing, just static. Then my reflection in the screen. Todd raised his eyebrows when I told him. "I told you," he said. "Aisle 14 is Different. People have been seeing her for years. Nobody knows who she is. Cameras don't catch her. I became obsessed with learning who or what she was. I searched online for incidents, for anything similar in retail night shifts, and found stories of store spirits, of people appearing in empty aisles, of eyes that never blink. Nothing concrete, only theories. I asked managers and old employees if anyone remembered anything unusual in aisle 14 before I started. "Oh yeah," one said. "We used to hear whispers near the dolls at night, always gone before anyone could see." I started leaving small offerings on the shelves, a stuffed animal, a note, a candy bar. It felt childish, maybe even silly, but it was a way to acknowledge her presence. The next night, the dolls closest to the offerings were slightly tilted again, like she had been examining them. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was something. A connection. Eventually, I stopped trying to chase her. I no longer approached the aisle expecting an explanation. I accepted that some things exist in ways we can't fully understand. I started speaking quietly to her when I stocked the shelves. "I see you. I hear you." And sometimes I swear she paused, just slightly, acknowledging me. The fear disappeared, replaced by curiosity and respect. Nights at Walmart were still quiet, but the aisles felt alive in a strange, respectful way. A reminder that not all presences are malevolent. Some simply exist, silent, watching and waiting. Some mysteries cannot be explained, and some presences cannot be understood. Life is about respect, acknowledging the unseen, listening even when you don't fully comprehend, and understanding that patience, awareness, and quiet empathy often matter more than answers. The world is bigger than we think, and kindness extends even to what we cannot see.